Yo, what up? Welcome to another math lesson, continuing our work through Chapter 12. We're going to talk about Chapter 12, Lesson 2 on evaluating expressions. Now, the good news is, if you've already done the homework for 12.1, you got a lot of practice with evaluating. That was kind of the introduction to evaluating. So we handled a lot of definitions that last lesson. There's really not that many definitions that we can go over. This is just going to be a lot of just practice problems, just to kind of get us used to the different types of ways that we can evaluate. So first little piece of definition work that we have to have figured out is we have to figure out what does substitution mean. Well, substitution is the process of replacing a variable with a given value. Think of substituting in like a sporting event like basketball. If you are a substitute, you're coming off the bench and you are replacing somebody, right? That means that person has to leave the court, and whoever you're replacing, then you take over their responsibilities. When you use substitute in math, it works the same way. Substitution is a process of replacing a variable. So you're just going to go ahead and replace a variable with a given value, and that just means a number. Instead of having a variable, a letter there, we're going to use a number instead. So that goes hand in hand with our word evaluate. We've done evaluating before. All you're doing is substituting and plugging in. They're telling you what the variable should equal, and we're plugging it in. Those are all the definitions that we have to cover, so we're just going to go ahead and look at a slew of examples to try to help us understand how to evaluate an expression. Now, I went ahead and on every slide from this point on for this lesson, I wrote our order of operations. Grouping symbols go first, then any exponents, then any multiplication or division, because we should do it from left to right, and then addition or subtraction follows any multiplication or division. And again, those follow the left to right rule. When we evaluate this expression, 2x plus 4, they're telling us that x is equal to negative 3. So that means I'm going to substitute, I'm going to evaluate negative 3 wherever I see x. And my reminder from last lesson is that whenever you evaluate, you always want to use parentheses. Parentheses are a really helpful reminder for us to fill in the blanks. Now, order of operations would say we would have to multiply first before we add. So 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. And now we can go ahead and add these. If you owe somebody $6 but you pay back 4, you still owe them $2. And because you are in debt and you owe them, it's going to be negative 2. So we're just going to be following our order of operations. After we evaluate, we're going to follow our order of operations. Cool? All right. Example 2 says evaluate this expression, and this looks way more complicated, but we're just going to take this one step at a time. We're going to identify our variables. Our variables for this problem are a and b, and they tell us that a is equal to 2 and b is equal to negative 1. So if I rewrite my expression, and instead of writing my variables, I put parentheses, I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the blanks. It says 4 times a cubed, so that means that a should go in the first parenthesis. That means if a is equal to 2, we're going to go ahead and put a 2 right there. Now, we're going to go ahead and evaluate for b. If b is negative 1, we're going to put a negative 1 right here. Now we're going to follow our order of operations. Do we have any grouping symbols? Yes, but can we do any work inside them? No, 2 is just by itself, and negative 1 is by itself, so we don't need to use that one. Do we have any exponents? Yes, we do have an exponent. So I need to go ahead and apply what is 2 cubed. Well, 2 cubed is the same thing as 2 times itself 3 times, which is the same thing as 4 times 2, which is the same thing as 8. So that means that this is the same thing as 8. And if I write down everything again, I go ahead and follow my order of operations. Do I have any more exponents? No. Do I have any multiplication or division? Yes. I have 2 cases of multiplication. And which one would I do first? The one on the left, because multiplication happens from left to right. So 4 times 8 is the same thing as 32 plus 3 times negative 1 minus 6. I can go ahead and multiply 3 times negative 1. So now I have 32. 3 times negative 1 is the same thing as negative 3. So minus 3 minus 6. And now I can add or subtract. In this case, I'm going to subtract. From left to right, 32 minus 3 is the same thing as 29. And 29 minus 6 is the same thing as 23. So our whole answer should be positive 23. So looking at this problem, there's a lot of steps, and it can kind of be complicated, but if you take things one step at a time, that's my helpful hint to not get so overwhelmed. If you have a lot of things to do all at once, well, you can't do them all at once. You have to take them one step at a time, and our order of operations is a really good way to kind of keep all these things in order. You get it? Order of operations, keep them in order. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and look at a few more examples. All right, evaluate the expression. They give us 3 different variables for this problem. They give us values for x, values for y, and values for z. Now in this case, for number 1, they want us to fill in the blank for z, and z is 11, so I'm going to put 11 right there. And y is negative 7, so I put negative 7 there. Order of operations, grouping symbols, sure, but there's nothing I can do. There's no exponents, and there is multiplication. So should I subtract first or multiply first? I should multiply first. So let's go ahead and multiply. What is 5 times negative 7? 5 times negative 7 is negative 35. We still have a negative sign there, and we get this guy. 2 negative signs combine to make a positive sign, so I get 11 plus 35. 11 plus 35 is the same thing as 46, and that's my answer. Now you might have noticed that what would happen if I multiplied negative 5 times negative 7? Negative 5 times negative 7, they're the same sign, so it gives us positive 35 anyways, and I would get the same exact answer. So it didn't matter in this case. Now in the future, I'm probably going to encourage you to keep that sign in mind, but as long as I brought this negative sign down, I'm okay. Now in this problem, we want to go ahead and evaluate 2x cubed. X is the same thing as 3, minus 2xz. X is still 3, so we brought the x there, and z is 11. Now order of operations says I'd have to do any exponents first in this case. 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. So I have 2 times 27 minus 2 times 3 times 11. I should go ahead and multiply these guys first because this multiplication happens on the left. So this would give me 54 minus this would happen on the left, and then I would have this guy. Now all of this is the same thing as 54. Negative 6 times 11 is negative 66. So 54 minus 66, if you have $54 but you owe somebody 66 and you pay off some of it, that means that you still owe them how many dollars? Well, in this case, it looks like it would be $12. Negative 12. All right, we're down to our last 2 slides. Our last 2 slides that we have to cover. In this case, they want us to evaluate again, but this one has a square root and 2 different variables. Now, the square root might seem complicated, but remember the square root is a grouping symbol. So what we're going to do is we're going to evaluate first. We're going to go ahead and plug in our values. We're going to plug in our values for K, M, or N, and then we're going to follow our order of operations. It says 2 times the square root of K plus N. K is 6, and N is 3. Cool. Now we can go ahead and follow our order of operations. Our order of operations says, do we have any grouping symbols? I'm going to say yes, because a square root is a grouping symbol. So I need to evaluate and then simplify. 6 plus 3 is 9. And the square root of 9 is the same thing as 3. Because remember, 3 squared is equal to 9. So the square root is going to equal to 3. Cool? I still have the 2 in front, and I still have the minus 1. Now that might be complicated. Like that's probably the most common issue that a lot of students have is they get so excited, oh, I can do 6 plus 3 and the square root of 9 is 3. You get so excited, but you forget about these guys right here. But they exist. This constant -1 is still there, so we have to account for it. Now, order of operations. Do we have any multiplication or division? I would say, yeah. I can multiply 2 times 3 is 6, and 6 minus 1, because I can't forget these guys, 6 minus 1 is 5. All right. Cool? Cool. All right, so we're just taking it one step at a time. The last example for us to cover in this lesson, kind of a short lesson compared to some other lessons, evaluate, and they give us values for K, M, and N. They want us to evaluate, and they say the absolute value of M. All right, so M is -4, so I'm going to put -4 right there. Times -12 over N. N is the same thing as 3 in this problem because they tell us that very clearly, that N is equal to 3. Now we're going to go ahead and follow our order of operations. Do we have any grouping symbols? Yeah. Reminder that absolute value is absolutely a grouping symbol. So the square or the absolute value of -4 is just going to be +4 because remember your absolute value is like a machine that turns everything positive. The absolute value of -4 is +4 times -12 over 3. Now, what we could do is we can go ahead and treat this like a grouping symbol. I can write this as 4 times -12 divided by 3, because a fraction bar is one of the grouping symbols, is going to be -4, and I end up getting -16 as my final answer. Now, another way that we could have handled this is we could have, if we wanted to, we could have cross-canceled. 3 and 12 becomes I'll do this in a different color. This is just an alternate version of what we could have done. 3 and 12 becomes a 1 and a 4. And we have one negative sign, so the whole thing is negative. And 4 times 4 is 16. So we could have done this another way. We got the same answer either way. The good news is, as long as our math is sound, we should get the right answer, and we should be checking these in. Now you can use calculators in this chapter. Just be careful. A calculator is a tool that will do exactly what you tell it. And some calculators, if you do not type it in correctly, they do not follow the order of operations because they follow the order that you tell it to do. So be careful with that. If you have a calculator and you are using that for this lesson, that's fine. That's fine. I'm happy for you. I'm proud of you. You are growing up. You are becoming one with the mathematical world that is around you. But it's just a tool, and it's going to do exactly what you tell it to do. So hopefully you remember to keep the order of operations in mind. All right, that's it for this lesson. Have fun on your homework. Make sure you copy down notes from this lesson. Make sure that you are writing your homework, all the work for your homework, in your notebook, because I will be checking that at the end of the chapter. All right, see you later. Peace.